my irresponsibility was just glaring into my face. So that's what I have for you today, guys. How I restored my credit by, how would I say that? Facing the truth. Going through the shame of having money and still being out of control. And just self-learning how to have this self-control. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Mod Toussaint Como and this is a mod thing. It's been a while that we have not talked. I think like silence is golden, which means sometimes when you don't hear from someone, it's because there's a lot going on. I'll try to get back in touch and share whatever I think you might benefit from, because this is what this channel is about. It's a mod thing and we talk about everything. Today I wanted to talk about essentially a journey that I have been going through. It has to do with credit score. I thought that maybe some of us may benefit from my experience with restoring essentially my credit. First of all, believe it or not, if you have a bad credit, depending on the journey you are in life, it feels very embarrassing that you are faced with realizing that you have bad credit. I can't even explain. It's so terrible. It reflects on your sense of organization, on your sense of being responsible, just everything. Somehow it feels a bit of a failure, a personal failure, and almost an imposter if you're a parent or a spouse, whatever, to realize that you haven't been responsible enough to get on top of things and have a good credit report. I started hearing about even people not marrying other people because they have low credit. I think it's an extreme because you can restore actually your credit, and the ability to restore your credit speaks volume to also your ability to improve in life. I would say maybe someone doesn't need to go as far as not choosing a mate because they don't have credit, to the extent that that mate can improve the credit. I think that's going to be valuable signal about this person's ability to improve. Let's put it this way, because I am proof that that can happen. And when I studied the journey, I really didn't think it could happen. I became quite obsessed. I would say maybe starting 4 months ago regarding improving my credit score. And I'm happy to report that I have increased it by a substantial number. And I'm here to talk about my experience on how I was able to do that. It's obviously a long story about why the credit became low. I don't need to go into all the details. There are things that happen. So the question is, how do you improve? Obviously, things happen with credit when you're not thinking about your credit. You go in your merry way, you just pay whenever you want, so you have late charges, and those little things are just adding up, and they're following you for 7 years. So you go on vacation and you're like, okay, I'll pay later, I have the money. The thing about my situation is it wasn't even a financial situation. It's more like a management situation. You're not thinking about it. You're not really facing with decision where you're trying to borrow because you have had your homes, you've had your car, so you're just doing your thing and not thinking about it. I realize some people really have stress, and that's why they're not able to pay on time and so forth. And that's what can make it even worse. You can be in a situation where people who are financially stable or still do not have the good management skills or not thinking about being on top of their credit. Any late payment is going to follow you for a good 7 years, for a long time. That's that. That's the first thing, those late payments, right? How do you prevent late payments? Obviously, you make sure you pay before your credit card is due. But I think more fundamentally, what we need to understand, and that's something I had to learn, is that a credit card is really should be a mean of convenience. It shouldn't really be used as constant credit. Especially if you have the money. It doesn't make sense to have money, to put money on savings, and you barely getting interest on it, and to use credit cards where you have super high interest on it. It does not make sense. You shouldn't use your credit card and just keep charging and charging and charging and pay whenever you want. It just does not work that way. It has to be used as a convenience and mode of payment at that particular moment. That means if you have the money, you use the card as a convenience, and then you just pay it as soon as possible. Period. You don't just use credit because you have the credit card. You're charging and charging and you maxing out just because you have the credit. And it is so high that there is no way you can just pay. Because realize, right, the situation for credit and where I'm coming from a level of relative financial comfort, which makes it worse. No matter how much money you make, if your credit utilization is a good 30% more of what you're making, you have no business purchasing anything whatsoever. It's really the psychology of spending that we really need to be thinking about when we think about credit. I think the way I end up in this situation is during the pandemic, everyone is going to their epiphany, they're doing things. Some of us were depressed, some of us were spending. And I think I was spending basically over things that are not even important, really. Things that I have a lot of, and then I find myself being overwhelmed by all the stuff that I have. I think that's the situation for many people. So you have the money, you spending and spending. That is not a good model. Psychologically, we have to all become mature and just not spend on things we don't need. That's all I can say in terms of credit management. There is no reason to just spend on things we don't need just to have and just build up credit to a max. And I'm saying that to some people, it's deaf ears, because until you become mature and you are ready mentally to deal with spending, not as a mean to self-smooth us, to feel some void psychologically in us, we're going to just keep maxing those credit cards, okay? So I was not at that level, and I admit I was not, so I was just maxing things out. I see the YSL purse and I really like it. I think it would look amazing with my outfit, then I get it. I see the Louboutin shoes. I'm sure you guys have seen my videos on my Louboutin shoes. All of those things are things that I'm spending. I love them. Now, the great thing is I have them. It's great. A lot of them are investment piece. So the question becomes then at some point, we just have to stop. Those shoes, we are not wearing them every day. They're not wearing out. So at some point, we need to step back and just enjoy what we have. And this is the season I am in right now, and that's part of my journey. And part of the reason I'm not bringing you a lot of content in terms of things and material things is because I am in the seasons of stepping back, realizing what I have, getting rid of things I don't need. Seriously, basically becoming more mature, more responsible. That's the season I am embracing. That's something basically that was the first step to fixing my credit. It was to become psychologically mature and stop purchasing things and dealing with the credit utilization level, which is 35% of your credit score. Everyone essentially can automatically improve their credit to a level that allow them to become, how would I say that, credit worthy, right? If you're trying to purchase a home, for example, there is a credit score you need to have. If you're trying to purchase other things, that credit score may be lower. So that's something we need to understand. There's different type of credit score for different products that we want to have. So we have to be careful. We hear about credit score. We need to understand what credit score we're talking about and for what we are getting it. From my experience, the best way to monitor your credit score for me was to, no commercial here, but that's what worked for me, was to get a subscription to MyFicoscore. And that was the most comprehensive report I got, because it not only gave me the score from 3 credit bureaus, Experience, TransUnion, and something else. 3 reporting credit bureau are monitoring your credit. And some of them look at other things more than other. For example, Experience may look at things like your bills and things like that. So you may be able to get some extra points if you show that you pay your bill. If you have some problem with your credit score, you may even get a few points if you link your bank statement and to show some bills you've paid, right? So different credit bureau are going to have different scores for you. But ultimately, when you do MyFicoscore, it tells you the score that you get from those 3 credit bureaus. And then it tells you the scores that you have, your range from those 3 credit bureaus for different products. That's the most important aspect of understanding where you are in your credit, right? For example, if you try to purchase a home, if you have less than 620, it's not possible to get a conventional loan. So by the way, I am an economist, but I'm not talking from perspective of economists, okay? Economists do not have to know about credit scores because that's a consumer education issue. That's common knowledge for everyone to know. That's consumer education. So what I'm explaining now is just from my experience as a consumer, not as a professional economist, right? Going back to the FICO scores, there's all type of scores. So MyFicoscore, when I signed up for it and I paid some monthly subscription to get additional aspect of what was going on. For example, when you get your report and you get your scores from the 3 credit bureau, the most important aspect of it is your score for different products. If you're trying to purchase a home, you would have a score for mortgage, and that would be what most lenders would be looking at. And then you would have a score for consumer product, and you have a score for maybe vehicle and things like that. If you're trying to do a mortgage, you have to have at least a middle score from those 3 credit bureau that's at least 620. That means you can have one score that's 700, 750. Well, there isn't a huge discrepancy between the credit bureaus, right? But you can have a score that's really above 620, but if the other 2 or not at least 620, your middle score is not going to be 620, that means you're still not going to be eligible to get a mortgage, right? So these are like the finer aspect of credit score we need to understand. That's the most important thing. So the best way to do it is, if we are in the market for a specific product, we have to be on top of it to know what middle score we have and whether it is at a minimum level that will allow us to get that product. Now, the biggest determining factor that's going to allow you to get to that middle score, if your credit is low, it's probably going to be your credit utilization. You have derogatory situation if you ever pay late, okay? So that's going to follow you. And there's going to be different company that will tell you they can remove those derogatory things. And you can also appeal those derogatory things. But you can get 2, 3, 4 derogatory things removed. But if you have a lot, seriously, there is a good chance that it's not going to happen. So this is not where you're really going to be able to improve your score. The fastest way you're going to improve your score, period, is by managing how much you are spending on your credit on a monthly basis. You have to get your utilization super, super low, which means you have to pay off those credit cards. Obviously, I am coming from a level where you have money, you have some money. Whatever money you have on savings, if you're trying to fix your credit, it doesn't make sense to keep it on saving. You just have to pay those credit cards with those high interest, period. And why would you want to even do that? You want to do that because the credit score is going to be important to invest. Imagine, rather than you spending for a frivolous thing, you have the credit scores that allow you to purchase a building and making money out of it, to allow you to become a real investor. Why would you not do that? Maybe after you become a big investor, you have a lot of money you can spend on those luxurious things. But if you find yourself having a lot of luxurious things, and then you look at your retirement, you don't see the prospect of retiring with at least $1 million. You don't see your prospect of retiring even early. Why would you want to keep high credit score by just buying junk when you could improve your credit score and use the money to borrow for investment instead of just spending? the trade-off. That's the trade-off we have to do. At the end of the day, I did use Credit Cent that remove a few derogatory things, but I'm just going to be very transparent. It didn't really work. It didn't really work. And you have to be very aware of that, because when I first approached them and they're like, oh, we can remove things, I gave them a tons of money to remove things, like some 250. And so when I went back after 2 months, I'm like, well, only 2 things have been removed. And that really doesn't make much difference. What's making difference for me is already my score is improving because I just paid off my credit cards. So my score increased by 35% because 35% is essentially was coming from that. So I fixed that whole aspect of things. So my credit score automatically improved to a nice level. So derogatory things would be nice if the creditors don't see that you have derogatory things, but Credit Cent only removed 2 or 3, and I was paying them lots of money. So I went to them and said, oh, okay, I don't see that you're really making a big difference. The real difference is coming from me, from just me paying off my credit card. By then, my credit utilization was like 2%. I had paid off lots of money on credit cards. And I was managing my spending. Going back to my story on Credit Cent, it was so funny because I'm like, well, I don't see you doing something. They're like, well, then do you want them to just pay $80? I'm like, I suppose, so from some 200, they were like, oh, okay, they say, what can you offer us? That's when I started saying, oh, okay, how weird is that? I had been paying 200 and they did nothing. And now they're like, we take whatever you can. So I was like, no, I really don't want to do that. So they say, okay. So I finally, the girl was nice, was sweet. I say, okay, then I'll just pay you $50. And the following month, they had only removed 1 derogatory thing. And they're like, well, we just have to change our argument and say something else. If the story was you were sick, you couldn't pay that credit, then we come and say something else. So the following month, there was just like maybe 1 derogatory out. So I called and said, because by then, part of being responsible is also not to be paying senseless stuff. So when I saw the Credit Cent was a little bit senseless, I'm like, well, part of me managing my thing is not to just spend money on wasteful stuff. So I really don't want to. The lady was like, well, what about, if we just charge you $25? But then I was like, okay, no, even $25 we're not doing. So that was my experience with the Credit Cent things. I suppose if you have 5 derogatory remarks and they remove 3, that makes a difference, but your score is not going to really be affected so much by just 5 derogatory remarks. But if you really have a lot of derogatory remarks, I don't think the strategy is to really expect to just remove the derogatory remark. The strategy has to be more like being serious, moving forward in terms of pay off your credit card and then manage the utilization of your credit card. And just use things for cash, or just use the credit card as convenience and just pay it right away. In fact, they want to see movement in the credit card. They just want to make sure that they're seeing that you're paying. So these are the type of things that's going to improve your credit score. it's being responsible mentally, making a decision to not waste on things you don't need so that you can keep your credit utilization low on a monthly basis, and use credit cards not as credit but as convenience, which means you don't give the cash now, but you are just paying this thing right away. What else? I think that's really the secret to fixing your credit. Follow what's going on FICOScore. Know the product you want. Obviously, the most important thing is if you're trying to really invest in real estate, you invest in your home. These are real reasons why you want to borrow money, not just use credit cards to just waste. Yeah, because it has real consequences. It really has real consequences. I actually do have a paper where through econometric modeling, I look at the effect of using credit cards on long-term wealth building. And I did see it has huge impact on your ability to purchase your home and your ability to save for retirement, your ability to pay for your college education. So I actually do have a paper on that. And I also serve as an editor for a whole journal symposium on management of money by middle-class individuals. But regardless of profession and things like that, at the end of the day, it doesn't come down to your profession. You can be a financial advisor if you have your own mental journey where you're not mature. You're still going to fall into that problem that I actually fell into. That was very embarrassing to me, that I had to learn first, deal with my mental issue of wasting money to just buy luxurious stuff for the sake of buying luxurious stuff. In fact, it's been very therapeutic for me to be in a position now where I am empowered enough to be more mature and not spend stuff on unnecessary things. If you've been following my channel, you know I talk a lot about fragrances. So that's a little bit connected to that, because psychologically, when I would go to my fragrance collection, it was a bit of an unhappy emotion for me to face fragrances that I had purchased blindly for a lot of money that I actually didn't really like. So it wasn't a nice journey for me to look at a collection where my irresponsibility was just glaring into my face. So I actually sold a number of things on Mercari. In the course of a month, I sold for over $2,000 of fragrances, maybe like 60 fragrances for over $2,000. And I realized that I was just really liquidating those things. So I was on Mercari. If the thing wasn't selling after a week, I was decreasing the price. After 2 weeks, I was decreasing the price. So it's a demand and supply thing. I suppose you can stick with your price and so forth, but if people were not purchasing it, then they didn't value it at that price. So I would essentially scrap the web and put those fragrances lower than everything else that was available for the whole public to see. So I was able to sell 60 fragrances very fast and for $2,000, but that was glaring in my face because those 60 fragrances probably cost me a lot more than this 2,000. Like, those things were heavily discounted, easily some of them 80-90% because I was also selling in bundles just to make it the offer attractive. Like I was selling my vintage set, that had different vintage fragrances. So I was selling the concept, besides the fragrance. And I was able to sell them very fast. And that was blaring to my face because I realized, okay, it's $2,000, but I probably spent a good $8,000 on that. So that's real money, guys. That's real money. We don't feel it because it's spread across time, but seriously, that's $8,000 that imagine if you saved it. It could turn, depending on the interest rate, it just keep multiplying and to the point where it can make a big difference. Now, I'm starting to feel much better when I approach my fragrance collection or I approach other stuff because everything that I have in it are things that I really enjoy. So that makes me feel a bit better because I'm like, okay, I have invested in those things I enjoy. I'm taking a break. I'm stepping back and really enjoying what I have. And at the same time, I'm being a little bit more responsible. That's a good place to be. That's a good place to be. I am hoping that you get to this place. I'm hoping you get to this place. That's not something I can just tell you to get into it. That's something that has to hit you, that you want to get into it because you have a purpose in life where somehow you become mature enough to define what your value system is. So if you get to the point where your value system is to be more responsible, more resourceful about how you approach your finance, how you approach your life in general, and that's going to reverberate on also the quality of your life in terms of being happier, that you have a bit more control, at least on that aspect. So that's what I have for you today, guys. How I restored my credit by, how would I say that? Facing the truth. Going through the shame of having money and still being out of control. And just self-learning how to have this self-control. So I wish the same for you guys. I seriously have been going through a lot in my journey, and I'm trying to be candid about the real stuff that I have been doing. Some of them I'm not ready to talk about, but you can be sure that whenever we have this conversation, they're going to be true stuff that's been super, super meaningful to me in terms of facing the dance. Facing the dance, guys, facing the dance. I hope you enjoy my candid sharing of living through the shame of having bad credit, although I have some financial comfort, and fixing it in the space of a couple of months. I don't think it's going to be the case for everyone, obviously. I was in a position where I was able to pay those credit cards, but unfortunately, it's not going to be the case for everyone. So the journey may take other people longer, but the journey is going to still be the same. There's only just one prescription, is moving forward, being mature, stop the crap of spending, in my case, on fragrances, on luxurious items that I had a lot of already, that I just needed to sit down and enjoy what I have. Yeah. Until next time, for the next truth, it was a month thing. Bye.